Hello and welcome to a new episode of Other Record Labels. I'm your host, Scott Orr. If you're new to the show, thanks for tuning in. This is an exciting episode with a great indie label called Jagjaguwar, home of Angel Olsen, Moses Sumney, S. Carey, and of course, Bon Iver. If you're new to the show, please check out some previous episodes and subscribe. I imagine we're going to have some new listeners because of this episode. Also, if you are somebody who is running a record label or a DIY musician, we have some resources at our website, including a free guide, which is a culmination of a lot of advice that our previous guests on the show have given us on how to run a record label or how to start a record label. So go to otherrecordlabels.com to download that. Today's conversation is such an honor. I'm such a fan of Jagjaguwar and the whole Secretly group and the story behind that. And we have another great episode coming up very soon in this big family. So please make sure you subscribe. And I really hope you enjoy the interview today with Eric from Jagjaguwar.
I mean, that's what I like about what I like and hate about indie music sometimes is just how small the world really is.
Yeah.
And like, you know, what have we been on the phone for all of like 4 minutes now? We've like got to
exactly.
made an
4 different
connect
degrees.
with
Yeah.
your neighbor across the street.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I know. Yeah, no, that is true. I guess, and that's a testament to behaving well, and you need to like be a good person in this industry because it's not going to be hard you burning one bridge will burn them all. True.
Or you got to be very careful about which bridges you choose to burn.
Yeah. Am I going to need this bridge later?
Very strategic.
Can I make this jump on my own?
Yeah, exactly.
I told someone yesterday that I was doing an interview with Bon Iver's label, and I said that as a way to kind of attach how important this interview was. I imagine that's a pretty common way to refer to Jagjaguwar. What's it like having a flagship artist? Does that make it hard for the label to have its own identity? If it's always, or maybe it's just in my circle of friends, but for me, it feels like the identity of the label is often connected so tightly with the flagship artist.
I mean, it's interesting. You know, I don't really dwell on it all that much, so I'm kind of just going off the dome here a little bit.
Okay.
I can talk about it from 2 ways. Is like, I think up until a certain point, until recent years, I think Jag was always very much considered, like a lot of indie rock, it's for white dudes of a certain age with beards in the music they're into.
Right.
Bon Iver happens to be a white dude with a beard.
Right, that's true.
But I also feel like he's the artist that has bridged all these genres and brought them, connected us with Kanye West. The list goes, Chance the Rapper. The list goes on and on and on. And like, as an institution and as individuals in this company, our listening habits are expansive.
Totally.
And it's like. So when I think about being tied to a flagship artist, I'm like, man, it is the flagship artist that like gave me a bit of courage as A&R to reach out to artists that are also part of my listening habits that might not be immediately associated with Jagjaguwar's history.
Oh, that's cool.
Whether that's Moses Sumney or Jamila Woods or
that's
like,
cool, yeah.
And so I do feel like there is some confidence there that, I wouldn't say it's because of Bon Iver, but I'm like, you know what? It does make sense for Jagjaguwar.
Yeah.
This is why. I think so long as our internal hires continue to mirror the diversity of the artists we're signing, I think there's always going to be a good balance between those two things, But I'll also say that I'm from like a small town in northern Indiana, a really small town, and 2,000 people.
Okay. In
like north central Indiana, and my sister's a totally normal person. And I've said Bon Iver around her probably 50 times, trying to explain what I do. They still think I work in a record store or a recording studio
that's right.
or whatever. And like a year and a half ago, I was at one of my niece's birthday parties, and I was like, yeah. And someone was asking me again, like a friend of my mom's or something was asking me about what I did. And I was like, our biggest artist is probably Bon Iver. he has this song called Skinny Love. And my sister looked up, she's like, Skinny Love. And I'm like, yes, I've said this 1,000 times, over the last 11 years.
Yeah.
And,
11 years.
And finally, I've lied. I've said that we put out Beyonce's records. I've said that we've put out, just to see, rock the boat and stir up some attention about what I do for a living, and nobody ever cared. No, we put out Beyonce's record. We do that. We did this. We did this.
Right.
And no one cares. They don't care.
Right.
I've been with artists on David Letterman before, and I'm telling my parents I'm going to David Letterman.
Yeah, and the Grammys.
They've been watching David Letterman for, when he was on air, decades with me. We were fanatics because he's from Indiana. Also,
oh, true. Yes, that's right.
So it's like it's a big deal, and they didn't care. It's just oh, that's interesting. You're going on for your recording studio.
Oh,
and
yeah,
no,
for your recording studio.
We put this record out globally. Yeah, and so it was like
good for you for trying so hard. I've given up on my mom for so long. Good for you.
Yeah. My mom. I'm speaking about my sister. My mom still doesn't care.
Oh, okay.
Only until I got to attend. We've been to the Grammys before with some records. This year I got to go physically, and I think that was the first time my mom was like, "What? You're going to be at the Grammys?" I'm like, yes. And she was like fully on board with that.
Oh, that's good.
She was more interested about what I was going to wear at that point. Have the proper clothing.
Oh, that sounds
stressful.
stressful.
At the Grammys.
Yeah.
I was like, Mom, I'm going to be in the dark part of the Grammys. Way up there.
Not on television.
way up there. No one. I could wear surf shorts to it, and no one's going to care. And that is actually true of the Grammys in general, I must say.
Oh, really? Yeah.
No one cares what you wear.
You're not in the first two rows, right?
Yeah, I don't think people care. It's LA. It's like a city of wild ass. You can wear whatever you want down the street, and no one's going to bat an eye at you. So
sure.
The Grammys very much were in line with that LA culture.
I asked this to Asthmatic Kitty about Sufjan, and I'm wondering how other artists feel. Does it ever become problematic with a label mate that steals a lot of the spotlight?
We have several artists who command a lot of attention internally and externally.
Yeah, okay.
And I think so long, last year, 2019, was a pretty outstanding year for us as far as those flagship releases. There was Sharon Van Etten in January.
Right.
There was, and then Piling, and then there was Jamila Woods later on in the spring, maybe in May, I think May 10th. Then there was Bon Iver in August, Angel Olsen in the fall.
Right.
And I think the thing you keep in mind in those moments is keeping those releases far enough apart to where they don't feel like they're encroaching on their territory.
Okay, that's true.
And then for the other thing they're paying attention to, and that their managers are definitely paying attention to, is on the socials that I happen to run, the way you're just let's
good point. Yeah.
Let's spread the love. Let's show everything we're doing. And I think, and it's not always an easy job. But that part of it, the social part of it, just because, when something's getting announced and it's heating up and press and fan alike are excited about it, it's hard not just to go full tilt boogie on that shit and
right. That's
lean
true.
all the way into Bon Iver for 2 weeks. So
that's
you're like,
true.
oh yeah, I haven't mentioned this campaign and this campaign we're going on, just because it's like love leads to love leads to love, and you just want to follow that trail of cookies.
This is probably how it feels to be a coach that has the first overall draft pick on your team.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I think I'm sure there are a couple artists on our label who listen to Bon Iver and they're like, I don't fucking get it. You know what I mean? And I think that's good. I mean, that's I think that's, if you think about, the way, HBO plans its seasons and the shows it has coming out, there are definitely shows where you're like, really? Yeah. This is on Sunday and this is on Monday. They just really don't connect for me in some way. But that's diversifying the portfolio and counter programming and all that kind of shit that you want to think about.
So can you give me a history of the label? Because I think for most people, and I don't know, I'm not going to always connect this to Bon Iver. We're going to move on, but I think for most people, it did come on the radar after the release of Forever. But I think it goes back further than that. Is that right?
Sure does. Yeah, in 1996.
Oh my!
was before my time, by the way. I want to be clear.
Sure.
I was in seventh grade when this was happening.
96.
Was not involved. Not involved.
Okay. I was probably in the 9th grade. What 96? How do the quick math on that? What year are you guys celebrating a birthday anytime soon, or?
No, that was it.
That'd be the 2016. Yeah.
It came and went, unfortunately.
Oh my gosh,
that's okay.
96.
And there's like another time that we really consider the birthday because I'll get to it, I guess.
Okay, go ahead.
It starts with one of the partners. His name's Darius Harmon, and he was from the East Coast, from the greater DC area of the Belt, I guess. He was going to UVA. I think he was kind of in a weird moment of thinking about whether or not he was going to drop out of school. But a brilliant guy, a guy who understands mathematics as much as law, and just a guy, a true Renaissance man, a genius. And I don't say that word. People use genius way too much. I'm going to drop it here. I'm going to mean it in all its ways. Anybody who's met him knows what's up.
That's cool.
But, he was also at UVA and thinking about dropping out of school. And I think working at the radio station there, working all night long at some sort of like juvenile center sort of thing. And he was promoting shows in a basement of a sushi restaurant called Tokyo Rose. And this was the era where like early days of Bill Callahan talking about, pavement, noise shows, and, got to just know a ton of people in the scene there and started putting out his initial releases, just one at a time, and kind of just like, sending them abroad. And then notice they would get a review or a store would order 2 of them. And it's just kind of like, and that's mind blowing, I think, especially of that era when you're not communicating regularly over,
right.
in the same way we're doing now, by any stretch.
Of
so to get those notes in the mail or emails and orders and things I think had to be truly mind blowing, But, at the same time in Bloomington, Indiana, the city from which I'm calling you right now, or you're calling me, speaking to you right now, there was another label called Secretly Canadians starting. Yeah. And I would say there was a shared aesthetic between the two. Okay. As far as the releases and the sounds and size for sure. I think they were certainly like acolytes of Drag City and what was going on there. And both labels sort of reflected that moment. Sure. So one of the founders of Secretly Canadian, Chris Swanson and Darius, I think just started sending love notes back and forth about what was going on with their labels and artists they were in love with and what was going on. And Chris was also in Bloomington promoting shows, doing the same shit, working at the record shop here, like just figuring it out. And I think that went on for a couple years. I don't know my exact dates. I don't know my lore. But I think at some point they figured out that they had figured out some sort of safety in numbers financial thing to where it's like, okay, let's just partner up, keep the 2 labels. And I think this was around 1999. Why
keep the 2 labels separate? Why not form a new label?
Well, I don't know. They're probably looking to I don't know exactly when Beggar's Group began, and they got to,
Oh, I see. Maybe,
480, all that was established. It had to be similar timing, I suppose. Or maybe it predates a little bit. I think maybe that's what they envisioned as far as like a label group. Let's just do this 2 label group.
That's cool.
They had also sort of deduced some sort of some idea for a distribution collective, which became Secretly Distribution, which we distribute, I think, 40 some labels now. Wow, and that was kind of like a part of this plan, let's get together. These will be the 2 in-house labels, but we'll partner up with friends like Western Vinyl and Temporary Residence, etc. I think those are some of the labels of the time. K Records, maybe. I don't know. Sure. I don't know exactly the first the first few, but Chris's one stipulation was like, you got to move to Darius. You have to move to Bloomington, Indiana. And so he did that sometime around 99, 2000. And we've been based here for a long, long time. I feel like where was I going with it? Was there a Bon Iver component to this question?
Well, okay. You know what? I asked you that it did come on the radar for Emma. The label came on a lot of people's radar when the first record blew up.
Okay, I can start to shape it in that direction.
Okay.
You know, and then I think every few years there was kind of a level up moment for just speaking to Jagjaguwar. The same was happening. The same was happening in Secretly Canadian too, by the way.
Oh, okay.
To where like Ockerville River, all of a sudden there's some traction with Ockerville River. Oh, I would even predate that and say there was a moment on a smaller level, but very significant to a certain listener with Oneida, Brooklyn band, Oneida experimental Brooklyn band, to where it's like, oh shit, we're selling some Iver records here. And then there was a moment with Ockerville River. And then after that, there's Black Mountain. And then after that, there's Wilderness. And then, you know, in 2007, there was the Bon Iver moment, right?
Right. 2007. I think that's close to what I read last
2008. 2007, 2008. Something like that.
Yeah, that's a long time ago.
Yeah, and that was before my time as well. I didn't start until January 2009. So I believe it was 2008. Bon Iver came out.
Yeah,
you know, and that I think the math was something. I've heard this. This is part of company lore. It's like, okay, all we need to do is sell 4,000 copies of this and we'll break even. You know what I mean?
Right,
and that's what they sold first week. And
first
week.
Oh
yeah, and then first week it was 4,500 copies. And then the next week it was, you know, and then it was like that ball just kept on rolling and rolling and just became this thing that.
What was driving that? Well, I don't remember. Like, I don't even know if I was really into the record at the time, but
I can only speak to it as a fan in some ways because it's about a year before I started.
Okay.
But I remember ripping it online the summer before Jagjaguwar put it out.
Okay.
Through maybe a song was posted on Muzzle of Bees, a blog called Muzzle of Bees, and I was like, holy fuck, this is like Prince, but it's like desolate guitar guy music. It's like this guy's singing in this octave I would never dare
that's true.
Try like whatever. And like and it's just hit the soul, just like this. I was getting dumped around that same time. So I was feeling the sad guy time of it. And
I remember it came out the same time. I think it came out the same time as Boxer from the National, because I remember both those records were hitting on everyone was talking about them, and I didn't get both of those. It was like the falsetto and the baritone. I just didn't understand it. Now, of course, I totally get it, and I love them both. But yes, what a weird time.
So it's hard for me to it's actually hard for me to think about when Jag put it out. I had been an intern for the labels in college, and then I moved away for a while. Moved to North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
And so that's where all this was going. The dumping was going down, and me finding out about like ripping this off Muzzle of Bees. Or I think it was a track was on Muzzle of Bees, and I just did a little like sleuthing around the internet, ripped the record somehow, and then. So it's hard for me to really say what was happening at Jag. I just know that early kind of break even, like, okay, if we do this right, I think it'll work out. And it ended up just going and going. I think it was just the right voice for the right time. I think all the press was hitting. I think it fed several different kinds of listeners at once. Right. I think, it was capturing the imagination of Sufjan fans for sure. Like that type of sad listener. I think also there is something like almost like going to, like there's something just sort of like gospel about it in some way too. Yeah, I know what you mean. I think also like you look at that old the cover on the Jagjaguwar release, and there's like it doesn't give you a lot of hints about what you're going to hear in a second. And I think it's just like one of those records that you bring your rucksack to, and you unempty your own shit into it. And like those records are really, really rare, and everything about it just seemed to, I think that the ambiguous title, ambiguous title of the band and the record.
Yeah, like, that's true.
There are a million, I don't know. Like, yeah, I'll have to. We should do a special bonus where we talk to Chris and Darius about what they think.
What did it? Yeah, I wonder too if that. I remember in my musician circle that was kind of one of the first times where a solo artist had used a band name. And aside from maybe like Dashboard Confession or something, but like somebody had used a band name, and that kind of set people off on a trend, and then you would never hear of a guy's name ever again. It would be just whatever, mountain range he wanted to name himself after.
Right, that's interesting. Yeah, maybe Little Wings before that was the only one I could think of off my just off the dome.
Okay, so how did you come to the label then? I mean, there's something big must have happened. Was there like a hiring boom after that record, or
maybe? Well, I mean, I'll dip back into my own personal tale, but like to go on with like the Bon Iver, sort of like how the label came to be the thing that it is. In the years after For Emma Forever Ago, I think they made very smart, concentrated moves to grow the company, add people, make it truly global. I actually started as an in-house publicist. Now we don't even have in-house publicists in North America. We have one in the UK. And so like that has gone on and on and on, and the next Bon Iver record was the one that exploded, won some Grammys, that sort of thing.
That's so, sorry, I just wanted to interject on that record.
Sure.
That's such a interesting part of the story, and to me that's I mean, it's just so rare for a sophomore project to exceed the debut. And I mean, there's a lot of people who would say it didn't, but it was just, I mean, I thought it was a better record, and then all the Grammys, and it just blew up. It just blew my mind that he could come and do something completely different and raise the stakes.
Well, I think this might go back to your comment about how you had noted at the time that it was one of the first times you thought about a single human naming the project like it was a band. And I think there was some intuition probably within Justin that this thing was going to expand and expand and expand.
Yeah.
And now you've even seen with this latest record, I mean, that's part of the story of the record. He's like, Bon Iver is not me.
Right.
It is the guy that I brought on to do art. It is the engineers I love to work with. It's this ever expanding, gelatinous cube that encompasses.
That's beautiful.
So, and I think that's kind of badass, and in the way that whenever you see people from truly within Bon Iver talk about Bon Iver, it's in that same sort of way where it is like it's not me, it's us.
That's great.
To use a Bernie Sanders, not me, us.
That's right. That's true.
And back
to your story. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm from North Central Indiana, very small town. Bloomington, Indiana has a large university in it, Indiana University. And the guys who started this company all went here. Then Darius eventually moved here. I went to school in like freshman year, 2000, but I didn't come to Indiana University. I went to Purdue University, which is closer to Chicago. If you can think about it on a map, Indiana University is like southern Indiana. Purdue University is like up in that left-hand corner of Chicago. And I went for that reason, to be close to Chicago, because I thought, okay, I'm going to go to the city when I graduate. And that's my move. And I didn't really, when you're 18, you don't think about the differences between colleges. At least I didn't. Like, oh, this is really good for my major. I started as a psychology major, eventually started doing communications and journalism. But I started working at the record store there, like the locally owned record store, Vaughn's Records. Shout out Vaughn's Records, West Lafayette, Indiana. And really, I'd never paid attention. I was like the music guy in high school. I was listening to Tom Waits and John Spencer Blues Explosion.
How did you get that way? Were you a musician? Did you come from a musical family?
Not at all. No.
Oh, how did you get into Tom Waits in high school?
I don't know. I'm trying to think of how. I can't remember that exact step.
Yeah.
But
There must have been somebody. There was no internet. There was no.
Well, I remember what I would do is actually, I was really into, I would go with my mom to I always knew that I just had this, I loved the weirdest song that would be on the radio. You know what I mean? Like something in me, like just always like, I was like, God, how could I hear that again? You know what I mean? Like, and you just have to listen to the radio a lot. One day, months from then, it would pop up again, you know? And you know, then when the alt stations started to come on, I was just obsessed over it. I would stick a cassette tape in my radio at night on the alt station, plus press record, just go to bed and wake up and just start cataloging it. Same, like my small town did not get MTV when I was like the age where I needed it, when I was like 6, 7. So I would go to school, to this conglomerate junior high, hand kids VHS tapes and say, hey, when you go to bed tonight, put this in, record MTV for me. So I can have MTV at my house. So I would have like...
That's so beautiful. What a great story.
I would have MTV Red Eye tapes, you know, from... and I would record over them eventually. It's not like I cataloged them. I wasn't insane. I would catalog them all, but then I would I would say, okay, I need to know about this, need to know about this. Yeah. I would go to our school library's microfiche and I would find every story I could on X band. Yeah. And I would read, or Pearl Jam, and I would read every interview with Eddie Vedder. And when he referenced Mudhoney, I'm like, okay, what the fuck is up with Mudhoney? I'm going to go find out. And I would just like go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And like, that was how you did it.
Were you buying records? Were you buying records when you were a kid?
Yeah, I would do CDs. Yes, there was like not a large chain, but like a regional chain called Karma Records. Okay. To where in the Midwest, maybe just in Indiana, in the bigger towns, bigger cities, and you would go and they had like a little digital kiosk. You could punch in the thing you were looking for. It would print out the order and you would take it to the guy at the counter and say, hey, this is what I want right now. I don't want to get too in the weeds on my story, but like, I think this is a telling story about me. Okay. Like an aha moment. So there were a couple other shows that I did get that I would tape all the time. There was a series on public radio, PBS, called Sessions at West 54th. Okay. David Byrne actually hosted it for a little bit. Wow. But the era I remember, he was not hosting. And it was just sort of this venue where they did these filmed, like intimate, sort of almost MTV Unplugged type performances, even though they were plugged. Mm-hmm. But it was just like filmed in that same way. Yeah. This really intimate way. And then there was a show hosted by Dan Aykroyd called Live from the House of Blues that used to be on TBS. Oh, yeah,
I remember that.
And they were on different nights. In my mind, they're both on Friday night, but how could I have taped both if that's true? Yeah. And so I would I always had some sport or something on Friday nights when I was in junior high, whether I was going to like the actual varsity games to hang out with my friends or whatever in the small town. But I would always program the VCR to tape whatever show, Live from the House of Blues. And one, I remember putting it in the Saturday morning after I'd taped this thing and watching it. And it was always just sort of like a potpourri of whoever, a few performances, or sometimes it would show like 3 Sebado songs in a row. And then it would show 3, what's that band's name? If you want to buy me flowers, just go ahead. No, what do they call it? Oh, come on.
I don't know. All those songs back then, all blurred, like they were all,
Moving on. And then, there was this performance of this group called the Fugees, but it was just a guy sitting in the middle of the stage, just kind of just like very sad dude playing his weird kind of where he was putting his own words in of a Bob Marley song of No Woman, No Cry. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is the most amazing shit I've ever seen. Because I was kind of raised, like my parents were not musical, but there was like Bob Marley Legend was always on in my dad's car, and Paul Simon Graceland, Bob Marley was like a big part of my childhood listening. And so I went to that record store. I was like, I got to find out about this band, the Fugees. And they're like, hey man, we don't have any of this record. We've never heard of this one. They don't have a new record coming out. I think it comes out in 3 months or something like that. They're like, but we have their old one. And I remember taking, I think it's called Blunted on Reality. You might want to fact check me on that one. I believe it's called Blunted on Reality. And I took it to school to like junior high before sports, and I had a little CD player in my locker, and we would play songs. We were hanging out before sports and stuff. I was like, this shit is going to be huge. This is like 7th grade. And everybody's just like, I don't know. And I was like, whatever. But then come spring season, I had the Fugees, The Score came out. And I took it to school, and I was like, this shit's going to be huge. And still, I think Fuji Law was the hit then. Mm-hmm. Nobody was paying attention. School year changes. Killing Me Softly comes out sometime in our freshman year of school.
Yeah.
And I remember watching or feeling like, it was like, holy shit, Dynas, you called it.
You called it,
2
yeah.
years ago.
This is your first A&R moment.
Yeah, that was my first A&R moment.
Unbelievable.
And I was like, I knew it.
That's awesome.
So that's like when I've tried to come up with what the origin story of who I am is, and sometimes that's like it's not an exact moment.
Right.
It's one stretched out over many, many, many months.
Sorry. Do you tell people that you discovered the Fugees? Is that how the story goes at parties?
In Fairmount, Indiana, I discovered the Fugees for sure.
You discovered Bob Marley.
Yeah.
That's great.
So I've been a music fan forever. One thing I had not paid attention to up until I was working at that record store, Vaughn's Records in West Lafayette, Indiana, was labels. I never cared.
Yeah.
Never looked once.
Interesting.
Never looked once, like...
You weren't a liner note guy?
Yeah. But more like baseball card stuff. Like, who's playing with who?
Okay.
Who wrote this song? Who's guesting on this thing? Whatever. Like... I just assumed they were all major labels. I had no idea.
I think I know what you mean. Yeah, that's true.
It's something I just had not paid attention to. And then I remember working in that record store in college and starting to put on, we'd get promos in, which was my favorite day. You'd get this long box of promos that you just get to play one after the other from whatever distro group, whether that's Caroline or whether that's Secretly Distribution, whether that's, whatever. And you just get to play everything, and you get to judge it with your, whoever you're clerking with that day, and kind of be the classic high fidelity asshole or whatever. And then, but I noticed this one box, and that there were a couple of Jens Lekman EPs. Maybe it was more actually. I think it was Songs Ohio first. I think Jens Lekman came afterwards. But just listening to some Songs Ohio stuff, which up until then had been a total blind spot for me. Something I was not into in high school or as a freshman in college. Mm-hmm. And I was like, holy shit, these people are amazing. So maybe I went through that next year of school, and maybe my junior year, I can't remember. I think I went through my junior year, and towards the end of my junior year, I wrote them, and I was like, hey, and then I remember looking finally this is Secretly Canadian, Bloomington, Indiana. What the fuck? Just this is happening 2 hours south from me right now, and I am stuck at Purdue University. And I had also gotten into IU. I just chose not to go here because I think I had, dreams of being closer to Chicago, like I said, and being able to go to those shows.
Was there something special about Indiana? Because is Pauly Vinyl out of Indiana too?
I think it's out of Illinois. I think it's out of Champaign, Illinois.
I'm thinking I've interviewed another label.
It's all the same.
I thought there was another label I talked to from Indiana.
There's Joyful Noise. That's out of Indianapolis.
I don't think it was them. I don't know. I'll have to search. Okay, but is there something about Indiana musically?
Ghostly started in Michigan.
Oh, that's right. Ghostly. Okay, they're in Michigan? Oh, that's right. Detroit. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Let me.
I don't know if there's anything special about it. I think you kind of scrap together some money with your friends when you're in college and start this thing, and then you realize that being here, it really creates low overhead and
that's true.
A very cool intern situation and those sorts of things.
So you interned at a label.
Yeah, and so I wrote to them leading up to that summer. I had this. Another a more journalism focused internship that had not fallen through exactly, but proven to just be financially impossible for me at that moment. Where I was like, I can't afford to just come and work for nothing and do whatever. So I was like, I'll just keep this job at the record store through the summer, but then drive down to Bloomington a few days a week to get to know these people, and became pretty good friends with like Chris, one of the founders. I think we had bonded more over movies at the time.
Okay.
He's a movie fanatic, and like I was, going through all my classic like Cassavetes vibe college guy shit, know, and I think we bonded more over that than music. And he was like, "Hey man, you should come out to this show with me tonight." And so we just hung out a little bit as I was an intern. Always stayed in touch. Graduated. I got a job writing for a newspaper in Charlotte, North Carolina. Moved there, but was spending all my money for those several years, 4 years, whatever it was, on music. Doing DIY shows in my house. Kind of started this DIY collective with some friends there. I was playing in a couple bands. It was also the heyday of MySpace.
Okay.
Which is a big part of my tale, I suppose, because it is like one-on-one contact with bands I loved.
Yes,
like,
that's right.
Phosphorescent. So we were trying to book these DIY shows in my house and other people's houses, and we were all like, we were all people with regular jobs. So we would just like say, you know what, if we got to take $30 out of our pocket to like help make this work,
right? That's cool.
Or to buy the keg for the night or whatever. It wasn't like, we didn't mind losing a little money on having a good time several times a month, and it was better than going out to bars.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I just started writing art. Like I would see that someone was playing a show in Atlanta and then a show in DC, and they would have 2 nights off in between. And I'm like, well, this is a travesty. Let me just hit them up and like say, hey, you should fucking play my house. We'll give you some money. We'll feed you. Yeah. You'll have a blast. We'll give you a clean place to stay, a shower. Yeah. It'll be no big deal. You want to pay for a hotel on these 2 nights.
Right.
And it just started working really well, Like,
and that was all through MySpace.
But once you help a couple bands out, they all have friends. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's just like, then you're getting introduced all the time to so-and-so who needs a show. And then it becomes too much. You're like, well, I didn't really want to do friend rock. I just wanted to do the shit that I liked, that's just kind of how it goes. But, and so I started doing that maybe around fall 2008. I was going to take a bit of a road trip with my girlfriend at the time, and we were going to come through Bloomington. And I think I just wrote to Chris, like, hey man, if there's something cool going on, let me know. It would be cool to hang out. He said, yes, there's a show. David Vandervelde was actually playing a show in town. If you're a David Vandervelde fan, he writes great songs. He's on Secretly Canadian.
Okay.
And he's like, it's going to be a fun night.
So, and you're reaching out to them after Pharema, the Pharema time, is that what you're?
Yeah, Pharema had come out earlier that year. Okay, that's right. This is the fall after.
And were you going to tell him that you stole a digital copy of it?
It was before he even had the rights to it, so it's no big deal. I stole it fair and square.
Okay.
So he was like, you know what? You'd be great at this, dude. You always write so well about music when you send emails about shit you're into. You should apply for this job that we have opening. We're hiring another in-house publicist, and you should do it. And so I, as part of that little road trip I was taking, did the interview. On the Monday, I was headed out of town, actually. And, got the job. I think they tried to hire someone else for it. That person declined. And I got the job, which is fine.
And you were looking for change? You were looking to move over to Indiana?
No, not at all. I definitely needed out of the housing situation I was in at the time. I was not. It was just because I would love throwing shows there, but like my roommates were just wild, and I just couldn't stand it for another minute or two. And but I wasn't looking for a change. The band I was playing at the time was like starting to do really well regionally. Like we could play shows out of town, and things were like going well, and it was definitely an issue. I always feel bad about it. There's always a what if of the reality coming out of my head if I would have stuck around. I also, broke up with my girlfriend at the time to move here.
What a sacrifice. So how
I also took like a $4,000 a year pay cut to start an indie rock, to be honest, from newspaper to indie rock.
Wow.
But,
wow.
But I thought, you know what, man, this is like a one, and now I've far exceeded that. Okay. So things are cool now.
Yeah.
But
And you're okay. We can start a little GoFundMe for you after this if you want. So,
I mean, I'm into that, but we don't need to.
So you were working at the record store. So you were familiar with the Secretly group, and were you a fan of that label? And
100%.
Yeah.
And so when I started as a publicist, by then they had started a third in-house label called Dead Oceans.
Oh, okay. They just started that? I thought that they consumed that.
No, it was
okay.
They brought another partner in named Phil Waldorf,
Okay.
who had worked in the industry in a bunch of different ways for a long time, and decided to partner with him on a new label. And that had happened maybe this spring, maybe fall 2007.
Okay.
They started that with him. So it was a really new label by the time I started. And I started in January 2009. And to your question, yes, I'd been starting at that record store. You know, I really just like devoured, because I think I also, I'd interned at a certain point and developed a personal relationship with them, to where I felt like I had some insight into the psyche of the people who worked there and why this was I remember hearing, I was in North Carolina, I think, when the Wilderness record came out. Do you know that band? They're from Baltimore. They play like this. They play like this wild sort of like post-language.
Yeah, no, I'm not too familiar with them. No.
Great record. If you hate it, that's okay.
Okay, I'll check it out.
You can also say that this is a safe place to say you're not that into them. I just remember just like, this is not what I would expect from Jagjaguwar. Like this is wild to me. Yeah. It sounded like, it reminded me of like Plastic Ono band, that kind of vibe. Okay. In some weird way, but big and post-rocky, like Explosions in the Sky version of that. And I just, and it's like almost at first this isn't right. And then you started everything that, like, they just spoke my language.
Sure.
I felt, prior to, just as I was interning with them is when they were putting out I Am a Bird Now by Anthony and the Joneses.
Oh, right. Okay.
And that was on Secretly, but that's like a record that in a million years, I would never have told you that I needed this torch singer from New York's drag scene, and like whatever. And I was just like enraptured by it.
Sure.
Like I was obsessed with that record. I could listen to it 100 times a day.
Wow.
And like, I felt like they were just dialed in into the person that I needed to be or was or whatever. And like, just giving me the goods wholesale.
Yeah. That was a really popular record.
Yeah. That was, and when I was talking earlier about like every few years, something big happened for each label, and I was giving you Jag's storyline parallel to that Anthony record was a big one for Secretly Canadian.
Right.
So yeah, I was a huge fan, and like while I was in North Carolina booking shows, I did a show for Phosphorescent, who was one of the first releases for Dead Oceans. Okay, Phosphorescent's Pride, great record. This band called Bodies of Water from LA. I did a show for them. A great band from the West Coast called the Donkeys. That I did a crazy show for them when I was in North Carolina, like at this wild bar called the Thirsty Beaver. That is so fucked up and so great. And right now, if you go to then it was in a big barren part of kind of like, the ghetto, quote unquote. Now it is it's like this tiny little cinder block bar that's surrounded by massive condos. Oh, really? It's not sold its land. The end to Batteries Not Required? You ever seen that? Batteries Not Required? The 80s movie about the little tiny flying machines and this holdout.
I mean, I think that sounds super familiar, but I mean, I couldn't remember a thing about it.
That's what this bar is like now. Or it's just like this holdout little establishment, and it's surrounded by these massive, like, modern condos. It's awesome. Anyway, that's where the Donkeys played. So this is all to say I was fully aware of the bands they were putting out.
Yeah, I
came in swinging. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I knew people. I'd already been in contact with plenty of booking agents.
So today, I want to ask you today, what is your title today? Director of Communications, you said?
Director of A&R and Communications.
Okay, so what was that the past 10 years like? What was that ascent? Were you ambitious the whole time? Were you thinking, I want to stay here forever? I want to grow with this?
No, no. I didn't know what I was. I came into this truly a lamb, like learning a new language in some ways. A fan of the artists, I knew a lot of the people, but like had no idea what working at a label entailed. And some days I feel like I still don't. Some days I feel like I have it totally down pat. But no, I came in, and I think pretty early on, I think there were some smaller projects that. We used to do in-house publicity for most projects. There was a project manager attached to each release. There were a couple early on I was a publicist that I was working on that did not have a project manager attached to it. This was kind of an era where not every band we worked with had a manager either.
You know interesting.
What I mean? So in many cases, you were working directly with artists. Many cases. Only at a certain sort of tier did artists start to require it's time to get a manager.
Sure.
Thing. Business is this good to where we need someone to look after the affairs in this way.
That wouldn't be the case today, though. Would you work with a band that didn't have a manager?
There is one on Jagjaguwar right now that does not.
Oh, cool.
But it's kind of the nature of the band that it doesn't really require it.
Okay.
So yes, but I would prefer them to have a manager, to be honest with you, because I feel like you end up doing some of those things when that's not your job. And so, like, I think one of the things I was good at early on in that publicist role was really talking about music and figuring out the intention of the artist to make the music, or why there is no intention, or like what the record means, and like just giving, once you can talk references and things it reminds you of, and like start telling different stories about making music, it's like getting along with the artist is a very natural thing to me. And so I think they were just like, these projects without the project manager, let's just give them to Dynas. Like, he's already the publicist. Let him do two different roles at once. It's fine,
Yeah.
And it was a little more Wild West then, I would say, than it is now. Like, no one would ever do double role like that.
And you were doing that across all three labels, or just the Jagjaguwar artists?
Correct.
Which one is correct?
I did it across all three.
Oh, okay.
Like the whole thing here is like we share infrastructure across the whole company.
Okay.
Project managers, marketing teams.
You said in the email that you're the only exclusive Jagjaguwar.
Let me tell my story.
Sorry. I'm sorry. This is my show.
No, I'm kidding.
Sorry.
It's true.
It's very confusing.
No,
keep going.
It's true, and I'm getting around to it. I am the only person that works for just one label company-wide, which isn't even true in some ways that I might talk about. But,
what's the Christmas party like? That must suck. Is it just you? You don't get to go to the other Christmas parties?
Just me in a huge stocking full of money. No, I get to go to the others. Thank God they invite me.
I just saw Bishop Allen on the Dead Ocean. I loved that band. Oh man.
Same. Click of the camera was a click.
Oh gosh, what a catchy. Yeah, man, totally overlooked. Love those guys. Castanets. Man, I still sing that today.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
And so I think, and I was not a great publicist. Like, I felt like there was something, I think it takes a certain kind of person to do all the certain kinds of jobs in this industry. And I don't think I am I'm great at talking about music. Once you get me going, I can like really have at it. But I think there's something about the pitch.
Yeah.
And like the following up on pitches.
It's sales. It's sales. Sales is a weird, dirty thing.
Yeah, I mean, but the people the publicists I love working with, I don't think of them as doing a dirty thing. I'm
Of course.
You're so good at, you're so good.
God bless them. Exactly. It's like washing windows on somebody's got to do it on a skyscraper.
I'm like,
Somebody's got to do it.
for you.
Yes, exactly.
And so I just, I can't say I was great at it. So I think at some point within my first year or so of working here, they were going to hire a new project manager. And I think I got to pick that's like, hey man, which one do you want to keep on doing? Do you want to try for this role as project manager, or do you want to keep doing publicity for us? And I was like, project manager for sure.
Nice.
And I think maybe there was some ambition attached to that, to be honest with you, because I think when you're a project manager, you're going to learn more about sort of the other side of the company, and you're going to be able to you're going to get a couple more hands into different facets of what goes on here. And I think, okay, that's the role that you could potentially grow with further.
A project that's not a common job title at a label, I don't think, is it?
They call it, well, I think other labels, I've heard it, when you're hanging around with people, a product manager is the thing.
Oh, cute.
But I prefer project manager because I think the product side of it seems like all you're doing is putting in product orders and things like that. And it's definitely more nuanced and people oriented, especially in the day that I'm speaking of, like when no one had managers and shit. And you're trying to coordinate. You're kind of you're keeping all the moving parts. Right.
So
together.
While the record's being mixed and mastered, you're kind of, are you working on the production side of things as well, or the manufacturing timelines, all that?
Yep. You're building out budgets, or being a very important part of building out the budget.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, you're building out the timeline once the record is announced, and all the little fun things that are to happen. And when if you're going to do billboards in Los Angeles, the company you're hiring and when they go up and how to highlight them and what you tag and who does it. That's
one of my biggest problems. Yeah. You're really relating to me right now.
you're really trying to just you're making sure everybody who needs to know about what's going on knows what's going on and when things are due. And
I've always wondered, if you have a record that is really highly anticipated in the industry or in the whatever, but you have to get, the master. You have to get the mastering done. You have to get the plates done at the plant. These are things that might have to happen 3 or 4 months in advance. But yet the fans and the press have no idea that this record is coming. But you want vinyl ready on the day of the release. I feel like that's such a juggling act to make sure that nobody spills the beans.
I mean, there's just trusted partners in all those different facets. You know what I mean? Because that person fucks up, you're going to be able to trace it back.
Pinpoint. That's true.
And then that person's not going to get much work for those size of projects that everybody wants to be a part of.
Good point.
It's just damn. So there's you stay in line because you want to keep working with these big artists and things. And, you don't want to be the person who biffed it.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but things happen. Things happen all the time. Whether that's in the digital realm,
things leak out.
Minutes,
that's right.
Fuck.
That's so funny. In Sweden,
kind of bury it away,
or in Australia. Yeah, I love that.
It happens less now than probably in the era that we're talking about, that 2010. Can you hear some?
Yeah, they're coming for you, man. I better let you go.
Yeah, I'm just a little north of the hospital here.
I see. Geez.
So sometimes this street right out front gets loud. And my office is just exposed brick on 2 sides. So
chilly.
Very loud. And I am on street level. So
how do you, so when we fast forward to going to the Grammys, how do you, evolve? Okay, so how do you not just evolve into a major label when you are 3 labels in one? What keeps you independent? Does it become harder to maintain that indie ethos as more sales comes in, Grammy wins, big sync deals?
It would probably, I would probably be speaking out of turn if I knew what at the partner level temptations were from majors.
I see.
I don't know.
I see.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
I surely don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think.
No.
If it has happened, I've never heard of it. And I know that if it has happened, they've passed.
Yeah. Sure.
I think that maybe back to your question, the thing that, is a bit of like it's a little bit of a thorn for me is like, when I started, and we can talk about my little bit of a journey into just working for Jagjaguwar too. I don't know how I can edit this down.
No. Keep going. People will be very interested in this. Keep going.
Is that, I'm definitely, I'm a record store guy. Like I love the active discovery. I love small artists that you build, you're like, I communed with this artist before, anybody else was taking them seriously and paying attention in a meaningful way. And we started working together at, ground zero. Yeah. And, that's not something we can really do anymore. Like
I was going to ask,
we're massive.
That's so funny.
100 and something employees globally.
Oh,
we're like,
geez.
That counts just distribution side of things too. So just
sure.
It's not exactly true.
No, you know what? It's so funny you say that, because I have a question that says, what chances do you have as a label to discovering the next For Emma CDR? You know what I mean? Like that to me is so interesting that you say that, like that it must get harder or you get too big or too established to find those grassroots artists.
Yeah, I don't know. I like, maybe to answer your question, I can talk a little bit about the next phase of what I was doing. And then there's an example within that to kind of talk about the last time that I've experienced it personally. But I think I can give one more too, actually, as we move on this journey. So I was the late Richard Swift. He's a songwriter from the Northwest. I was his project manager at the label. And just had a great rapport with him. I mean, it's hard to have a bad rapport with him, to be honest. So had a great rapport with him. I eventually moved over to proper project management. And you know what? Because the guys at the company trust your taste. And I'm just like, and this is true of a couple other project managers and people within the organization. They know we're just hungry discoverers of music. And so we're always sending things on like, yo, look at this, listen to this thing. A friend hipped me to this. A friend from New York hipped me to this. Just check this out. And Richard Swift sent this demo of these kids who they'd given him a demo at a New York show. They're called Foxygen. And I was just like, what is this? Like, it was mixed so terribly. It was blown out. It was awful. And he goes, I'm going to mix this for them. They're going to give me the files and let me have at it. And he didn't make it much better. It ultimately was just a weird, but crazy recording. Sure. And I was like, it was like my first true A&R project. This is summer of 2011. He was like sending these, and I started talking to Rado from the band a little bit. And so was Chris. And we were trying to figure out how this could happen. It was a small enough machine at that time that we could take this artist from out of nowhere and still invest in them and see like, okay, I mean, truly out of nowhere. Yeah. Not written about once, not even on Muzzle of Bees. You know what I mean? Like, like even lesser known than like a small, sort of like blog artist. There was no blog paying attention to them. Wow. But I was just like, please, can we do this? I begged for months and months and months and months. And, that was like in my, like one of the last handful of like truly out of nowhere discoveries that ended up being monumentous for the labels. Absolutely. And it's like the next phase of like what I ended up doing is like, I got so embedded with Foxygen. It was right around the same time we were venturing into the management sort of side of the industry and starting this company called Fort William Management with Amy Spieshak. She managed Grizzly Bear at the time. Okay. Yeah. And I guess I never consider myself ambitious, but I started thinking like, damn, I should manage Foxygen. Like I know them enough. Like I have good taste. Like I could make a really cool management roster if I wanted to. And, so I ended up doing that and going into Fort William for a handful of years, for 3.5 years or something like that, managing Foxygen. I also managed an artist named Jenny Val. HVAL from Norway. Do you know her music at all?
Yeah, that sounds familiar too. Let me search that.
She's great. I mean, she's a genius. She's truly a genius.
Yeah.
This guy named Steve Gunn, who's on Matador.
Steve Gunn?
Steve Gunn, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we interviewed, we did an episode with Three Lobed, and he's done stuff with
Corey.
Three Lobed. Corey, yeah.
Yeah, dope. Cool. Yeah. Who's kind of like Steve's manager or lawyer too, in some way.
Right.
Handled the negotiations with Matador.
I bet. He's still a full-time lawyer.
Okay. Yeah. He's great. Cool. I'm going to listen to Corey's episode.
Yeah.
He probably thinks I'm a dumbass.
No, he's the sweetest guy. He was so sweet. I loved it.
He's so smart.
Yeah, he was actually one of the first interviews I ever did. He got back to me so quick. He was a great guy.
Anyway, and so, I mean, but that was around the time my second child was being born.
Okay.
When I was managing artists in that first year, and man, I got to tell you, it was a nightmare. And like, at Fox, it were of a particular sort of like, they pushed the envelope. They're wild asses. They were young guys, like getting like the first hint of like success, and so was I. I was a pretty young manager, getting seeing a little bit of success, and I think I don't know. It was like a very weird time. I hated managing artists. Hated it. I loved talking music with them. Hated it. I had put in I was going to quit.
So, and you had shifted over from project managing to managing the artists. Is that right?
Right.
Oh, okay.
Man, and I've just realized how squeaky my chair is here.
No, I haven't heard it. You're doing good.
Oh, beautiful. Yes, I'd been managing for about 3 years. I just hated it. I was kind of just going through a life change and just like, okay, what is my purpose here? And I was going to quit altogether, and had made that clear to the partners, who also were part owners in the management company, and Amy, who was kind of the outside partner in it. I was like, hey, I just think let's put an end date on this. Let's look out in 5 months. Let me figure out what I'm doing with my life. I can still love music and not be a part of the industry and just go on. And and that was the plan for a minute, for a month or two. And then one day early in the morning, because Darius was in Spain for something, he called me and he's like, hey, Eric, do you have a minute? And I was like, yeah, it's 7 a.m., but sure, Darius, let's talk. And he's like, hey, so I've been thinking about a role. I want to keep you what if Jagjaguwar, just Jag, created a role to where you're such a great storyteller, you put together the communications plan for Jag, be our director of communications, and do A&R for us. And I was like, yes, dude.
Wow. That's awesome.
I was like, yes, dude. Yes. I was not sleeping very well at that point in time.
Oh, man.
I didn't know what was next, and it was months out from when I was officially going to retire. But I remember that day just it's those special moments in life when you can really feel that ball roll off. It rolls right back on in another way. But when you can feel it just okay.
That's amazing.
I dodged a bullet. So
beautiful.
That was fall 2015. And that's when I stepped into this role.
Okay, 5 years ago.
Doing it since. Yep.
That's awesome. Yep. That's awesome. When I think of A&R people, I think of those assholes on TV shows who stand at the back of the venue pretending not to care, wearing a jean jacket. Is that an accurate description of you?
Oh, I always wear my jean jacket.
Sure. And leave in the middle of the first song.
Oh, no.
What is
it?
I'm joking.
I have the weird, okay. Not that my colleagues in A&R in LA and New York are like that.
Yeah.
But I also have this weird, I inhabit this weird space that I live in Bloomington.
Yes, that's right. That's true.
A lot of my, and we have offices now. Since I started, since I began my role, since I started in 2009, we have opened offices in New York, in Greenpoint, and in LA. We've expanded our offices in London. We've had an office in Austin that now has sort of migrated to New York. So, it is not all a Bloomington company. I just want to underscore that here.
I read that.
But it is almost like an absolute silly proposition to say I can do A&R from Bloomington, Indiana, in this era.
Right? Yeah, to go see a band live.
But I'd say it really. I think I come at it in a way to where I really don't buy into to the sort of regional hype, the sort of like the cool kid hype.
Yeah, right. That's
but
true.
I probably buy into it in my own way. I don't know. But I think there's also just like, when you talk to someone on a phone for the first time and you're like, I'm actually in Bloomington, Indiana. There's sort of just like, wait, what?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Let me tell the tale. And it's like this.
It's counter to that archetype that I described.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And so I think it is part of the story, and like it does help in some ways, not always.
Yeah.
Not always.
Yeah.
Or just like, when a really young like band is getting hyped and they're on their first U.S. tour, chances are they might play Bloomington, Indiana because of our university at our small little,
true.
one of our small clubs here. And damn, when everybody's like standing at the back of the room in New York City, whatever you're talking about, like this is a good place to get real FaceTime with people and have like that sort of like small tour date experience with them. Not always a great night, not always a ton of people there.
So what does
like, they'll remember you, and they'll remember like what the night they had, like I think we're in a different era of A&R. This is probably like
absolutely. Well, that's what I want to ask you.
I'm talking about
what does it look like now then? And I mean, aside from those live shows when they tour through town, what does it look like for you? Are you guys the next step label from smaller labels? Are you still doing deep dives on Bandcamp to find undiscovered artists? Like, what does that look like for you today?
I mean, yes to both of those. I mean, I'm still like the deep dive guy. Like, I'm never afraid to present something that's just like came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I'd say like it is. I don't think. I do think we're great for that artist who's established a bit of a fan base. I think we're more like base expanding at this point. That I think it is very hard for us to start with scratch. Start from scratch. Mm-hmm. I think it can work from time to time, and it's hard to say why it does or doesn't. I was trying to think about Dead Oceans. I was thinking about Phoebe Bridgers.
Yeah, sure.
And I don't know much about her story before the Dead Oceans record. I got to be honest. I love that I have that Secretly Canadian and Dead Oceans are a bit of blind spots to me. Like they exist in some other universe because of my like dead focus on what's going on with Jagjaguwar. Yeah. Sometimes it's true. And like I watched, I remember when, we were all talking about Phoebe on A&R threads and like, which label's going to take it. And we, the timeline she was kind of working on was kind of aligned with an artist named Moses Sumney that's on Jag. And we were just like, I don't think it could work out. It was like, okay, let's just, Dead Ocean's going to take it. Or I can't remember exactly how it was divvied up.
Right.
And just to watch her meteoric sort of fucking rise has been like, damn, like that's another example of what I was talking about. Maybe that's not exactly from scratch. You know?
Yeah.
In the same way. But, I don't know. I always start with a unique voice. Like, and I don't just mean that as like a singing voice I've never heard.
Yeah.
A voice that's just like, where is this coming from right now? This is, like, I love to be confused by art. I love to not quite like it at first, to be honest.
That is a great place to start, I think.
And because I think about visual art a lot, and like a lot of the visual art that I return to again and again is always art that I remember looking at it the first time and being like, ugh, huh?
Yes. Yeah.
And then something about that, kind of stays back in there and fucks with you a little bit.
Oh, totally.
And I think it's the same for music. I just think sometimes it's easier for me to talk about visual art than it is music in some way. And it sticks back in there. And so I think that unique voice, something that you can't quite place, or something that actually, it's like, have I heard this song before?
Oh yeah.
Did I hear this song in the back of my mom's Cutlass?
Totally. That's a very common thing.
This is a riff on something and that eats at you in some way. And so I feel like those are the things that I focus on. And it doesn't matter how many fucking streams you have on Spotify. If you get my attention in that way, like, I can't let it go, then I don't let it go.
Do you have, okay, I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question, but do you have these internal triggers that you recognize now that if something like you're saying, if something is like you're really kind of distracted by something or repulsed by something, even that hey, maybe I should pay attention to that and keep an eye on it?
You mean internal, like inside of me?
Yes, inside of you.
Like organizationally. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I can give a great example of an artist we don't work with and probably won't. That like, I'm fine to talk about him and what it like. I think one of my favorite living musicians is this guy from LA named Sam Gindel.
I don't know that name.
He plays like, he's approaching jazz and music from this place that I just am endlessly fascinated with. He put out a record on None Such.
What's his name? Oh, great label.
Last month.
What's his name?
Sam Gindel.
How do you spell the last name?
Gendel.
Okay.
Can't spell legend without Gindel. That's what I always say. But he's just a fascinating musician and a very quiet person, keeps to himself. And we've been chatting about his music for 3 years now. Like, I think if my colleagues listen to this podcast and hear me talk about Sam Gindel, they will do a face palm because they'll be like, oh my God, Gindel again. The sentence can't come out of this guy's mouth.
He's the one that got away.
But it's because I believe in him to the hilt.
That's amazing.
And what he is capable of. And so, he ended up, we're working with him on the publishing side now.
Okay.
But I think that is an example of something that didn't work out label side that is truly special. You'll listen to his record that just came out and you'll be like, holy shit, this guy's a phenomenal.
I will.
He's amazing. Like, if you love music, it comes to you, and
Yes.
it's kind of like a weird standards record too. Like,
well, I'm just reading the description from what you're saying. I already know I love it, which reminds me of and this goes back to what you were talking about in high school. But I remember reading in the Jeff Tweedy book that he said that he used to buy music by reading the reviews in magazines, and then from that description thinking, okay, I would like this record, and going to the record store and buying it. And I just was like, sort of as you're talking, kind of like reading over the None Such page and thinking, man, that sounds like I would like it. So I already like it.
Yep. So I think it's just someone I was purely obsessed with.
Yeah.
Internally.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's gotta, you have to somehow, there are times where you're obsessed with something so much but it might not be right for everyone else. Do you know how the difference?
Right. We are democratic to sometimes a fault, in my opinion.
Oh, okay.
No, like we're very democratic, and I think that's because, like, man, when you come aboard, certainly a label of our size, and you want to know that everybody there is a champion of what you're doing,
yeah,
and
totally.
not like one person's passion project.
Yeah.
And because that's just going to make your experience that much better, and know that you have commanding everyone's attention.
Right.
And it's not that Sam wouldn't have had that. I just think early on it was just kind of like, some of the indicators there as to size or whatever weren't quite matching up, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But we found different ways to work with him. You know what I mean? We have a publishing arm that seemed to be right. Like, he and I have a great rapport. Like, I do think that one day he's going to produce a Young Thug track or something that
right
blows people's minds.
And you're going to say, I told you, I knew it.
Yeah. Like, I don't know what it'll be, but like something like that. It lies in his future.
I have an idea for you for how you should go about this in the future. If something like this, it got me thinking about a story I heard about how SNL writers will pitch their sketches at the Wednesday pitch meeting. If they have a sketch that they really love and they really want to make it on the show, they will pitch something else so that gets initially denied, and then they'll come up with this as like their plan B, knowing that the first one always gets denied. So maybe in the future, pitch something else before you pitch the one you love.
That's a risky move, man. It's Apple. I think it's like, so you know what? One of my phrases I hate most in this world is apples to oranges, because at the same time you're like, well, they both grow on trees. They're both sort around. They're both sweet. They both have seeds on the inside.
They're delicious.
They're both fruits. They're both delicious. Like, you go on and on. It's like, it's a pretty good comparison, to be honest with you.
Oh, that's great.
But I do think maybe yours is like you pitch that. You think you're leading with the artist that's going to like maybe not make it through the gauntlet, and whoops, they make it through.
They do. Yes. Yeah. Well, that's funny. Listen, I won't take too much more of your time. This has been fun. Yeah. I am such a fan of this label. It was such an honor to get through to you through that email funnel and to chat with you. What's the so I know we got this this artist series that you're talking about, which by the way, I mean we floated over it when we were talking about Hemsworth at the beginning. But anyway, no, I mean that's such a cool thing. And aside from that, is this? I mean, you have, aside from making partner or getting your name on the side of the building, is this a great position? Are you happy here? Or are you excited about the future? Are you excited about the future of the music business? Are there things that depress you about it, or how do you feel?
Oh, that's a big one. That's a big old wide question you just laid on me.
Sorry.
I mean, I think like I am an ultimate optimist, even though I think I dwell in the dark thoughts a lot.
Yeah, same.
I usually come out of it with like things will get better.
Sure.
Know? Like,
yeah.
I don't know whether that's upbringing or something like inside or whatever it is, or just because of the things that I love in the world. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But and this is a very weird time to answer this question.
It is. Right.
The last couple months have been a real, or last month and a half, whatever it's been. It's been a real shakeup to our release schedule. We've had to make some decisions about when things are coming out and how. Like, that kind of relates to the Friends Up project that I speak to.
Yeah.
So it seems like a weird time right now.
Yeah.
But I do think that we work in an industry and do things that people have needed since the beginning of time.
Sure.
That they've always used.
Sure.
Music as a tool for storytelling, and for relief, and for hope, and that's not going to stop.
Yeah.
There might be powers that actually try to stop that, but it's not going to stop. That's true. And I think that's why I feel kind of unshakable in my belief about what we're doing here. So,
and it's true. People are going to look back at Jagjaguwar in the same way that we might look back at Sun Records and think of the golden age of streaming or something. And
I hope so. And I hope you're right.
And they might just think that we had it all in our time.
Yeah. And like, and as far as my position and like where I do have a little bit of ambition. Like, I think my qualities and the things I'm good at are less technical and probably lean a little more towards like the artistry of it, and the creative sides of it. I would love to develop a role that's a little more, that even leans into that a little more. What that would be, I don't know.
Well, from your story,
the people that run this place have been very accommodating. They're really good at denoting what people across this organization seem to be good at, where their skills are, like where they fit, and kind of shaping things that sort of help them, push them along. And like, I'm a prime example of it. I can think of 10 more,
That's amazing.
I mean, my hope is to be here for a bit longer. Like, it's definitely like, in this moment, in this sort of like isolation moment where you see lots of friends who are writers and friends who are artists struggling a bit or worrying a bit. Like, I feel very grateful. Yeah, I'm in an organization that is, gonna weather this thing, and not going to see a ton of change. Like, I think it's going to take some lumps probably, but lumps that should not affect the people who work here. So,
well, and I think the reputation of the label, and this is someone from, before talking to you, I didn't really know much about the label, but the reputation from my viewpoint has always been great, and all the pieces, and I follow Darius on Twitter, and the things and the messaging I've heard is it's always positive. It's always and so it's great to hear that from you. I mean, you could be lying, but it's great to hear that from you.
Yeah, I'm lying.
The only thing we have left to do is to convince your sister that you have a legitimate job. So hopefully, maybe she'll listen to this.
Courtney, if you're out there.
Courtney, if you're out there, it's a real gig.
On a podcast. God damn it.
He's been on 2 podcasts.
A coronavirus-centric podcast and a record label podcast. People are curious about my opinions on shit.
Thanks for doing this, man. This has been a blast.
Man, you bet.
Thank you, friends, for listening. Make sure you check out Jagjaguwar. I would recommend going to a record store, but I don't know if you're allowed to do that where you live. But you probably don't need to because you already have a Jagjaguwar record in your collection, I'm sure, somewhere in there. Thank you for listening. Make sure you go to our website, otherrecordlabels.com, where we have previous episodes of the show, and we also have some resources for the people who are starting a record label or DIY musicians who manage their own career, or if you are in the position of thinking about starting a record label, head to otherrecordlabels.com. Thanks so much for listening.